Hello, and welcome to another edition of What's Going On, a new segment in which myself, ST Wickett, and Michael Curzon discuss the stories that don't quite make it to press. We're going to discuss summer holidays or the lack thereof. So, Michael, what's going on?
Well, what's going on is that 50% of the UK population has now been fully vaccinated against COVID. 75% has received one dose of a vaccine. Deaths from COVID are plummeting. Actually, last week we saw a day with zero deaths, and the days around it we saw one, two, three deaths, something like that, very low. So fears around the Indian variants, especially for those who have been vaccinated, have been shown to be unfounded. Yet, despite all of this positivity, we are being ensured that we must remain negative. Holidays, which last year we all said, well, we won't go this year, but we'll definitely go in 2021. Not happening. If you have any holiday plans, it's very likely they'll get cancelled last minute. Hopefully, you can get the money back for them. If not, you're screwed. It's this silly thing where we're told all these great stories of news, allegedly, where deaths are down this low, great stuff. Vaccines are this high, great stuff. Can we return to normality then? No, you can't. Why? Some silly fear about variants. A rising cases in Portugal, which hasn't really been that extreme. It's quite minimal from the data I've seen, and it's just yo-yoing. One day it's good, one day it's bad, and it's keeping people really in a constant state of turmoil where there's no chance of respite. There's no chance of having a break from the last 14 months of misery. No, you've got to stay here, carry on, and grudge through it.
See, this is my approach to holidaying in the era of COVID, and I'm curious to know how widely held this opinion is, where I'm not worried about getting COVID or getting caught up in the latest variant and dying in the street of gasping for breath. I'm worried that one, it's just going to be a just full of hassle, the experience of traveling, and two, I don't very much feel like being stranded on the continent when the government suddenly decides that 25 cases in Lisbon is enough to lock the country down for another 3 months.
Absolutely, and there's a third element for me, which I'm sure you'd agree on, which is that even if those two elements weren't to happen, if you were fortunate enough to be free of those two miseries, if the booking process was fairly easy and your holiday wasn't cancelled last minute, which is a big if at the moment, admittedly, but even if that didn't happen, you get to the country. You're likely still to have to wear a mask whilst you're walking inside. You can't be friendly with locals or people at local restaurants and bars and shake hands and that, because of course you'll be breaking social distancing rules. You'll have to show certain certification in certain countries in order to go to particular events, to see certain landmarks, and just the usual bustle which I think surrounds holidaying, which partly makes it fun, isn't going to exist. Everybody's going to be quite wary of each other, and there's no of course holidays aren't particularly communal, I suppose, since loads of different people from different places um, try and enjoy something at once. But that also is part of the fun,
Mm.
that people come together from all different areas of the world and enjoy certain aspects of what countries have to offer. But now it's a
Oh,
completely individualistic
mm.
process where you,
Oh,
you go in, put your head down, and quickly get out.
Well, I mean that's true of domestic life too,
Yes.
and part of the magic of holiday is you get to escape domestic terrestrial life for a bit. But no, this again, this individualistic, go do what you absolutely must, then come straight back home again and lock the doors and keep your mask on and whatever is yeah, it's now a universal experience. The idea that you're going to go to, I don't know, Tangiers or Lisbon and be immersed in a new culture is just not true. You're going to go there and you're basically going to be in lockdown, but with possibly slightly nicer weather.
Which makes it worse. I don't know. I mean, I'd rather wear a mask in the cold than in the warm. At least, despite all the nonsense elements of the mask wearing in Britain, you've got the part advantage that it keeps you warm. Not true elsewhere.
Yeah. So as the title suggests, we are not going on summer holiday this year. I mean, it's just like, why would you? Like, why would you inflict that much hassle on yourself and pay hand over fist for it?
Well, I mean, some of the extra charges now you'd have to carry out, especially if you're going to an amber list country where you have to take a certain amount of tests when you get back, and these aren't cheap. And of course, that's purposefully the case. I mean, they've come down slightly, but still they're at about the £60 mark on average, which for a family of four is a horrendous cost. And heaven forbid you travel to a country which is amber and then ends up being on the red list, because then of course you'll have to pay £1,750 to stay in a lovely government approved hotel, which doesn't sound fun. But we've recently recorded the week in review, Sam, and I mentioned there as well that it's, is it consoling, or does it just make it even worse that actually France seems to be in a even more ridiculous position in terms of who it's allowing into the country? So the Mail ran a piece saying, finally some good news, and then ended up writing 750 words of misery, in my opinion, in which it said basically, you can go to France if you've been fully vaccinated. And you can also go if you've received one vaccine, but you'll have to isolate for a week. And that also applies for children down to the age of 11.
Hmm.
So even young children have to be fully vaccinated, or if they've only had one vaccine, isolate for 7 days. And I don't know what the rule is for people who haven't been vaccinated at all. I imagine it's pick up your bags and go back. And of course, there's
Or just don't,
in all of this.
or just don't bother. It's annoying for me personally that it's France, because there's a small town not far from Paris that I'm absolutely in love with, and I was planning for that to be my grand return to the traveling ways, but it looks like those plans are on hold for the foreseeable future.
Oh, the French are rude enough without the masks. Imagine trying to battle for a conversation with with
Oh no,
someone off the mask. Then
it
impossible.
it's a town with a surprisingly English temperament.
Oh, good. Well,
Um,
I'll go there then.
yes, it's yeah, no. The the more we talk about this thing, the more I just again, as I was saying in the week in review, my pessimism levels, which have never really that far exceeded my levels of optimism, have kind of faded away a little bit. And I see it in the average rhetoric, where early on in the first year or so of the pandemic, there were the rainbows, not obviously in homage to the LGBT movement, but in the sense of, after the rain there is a rainbow, and this is going to be difficult, this is going to be tough, it's going to be frustrating and lonely and atomizing, but at the end of it, we'll be able to emerge gloriously into the world. That those hopes, and you can even see it in the rhetoric, where that's not even what they're saying anymore. At no point have I heard a government minister in the last several months say, it's going to go back to normal, we're going to get our lives back. No, they aren't even saying that. They're saying, new normal, build back better, this is our chance to reimagine the world. But the world, with some exceptions, wasn't particularly broken in terms of, going on a nice holiday to a picturesque little French town.
Mm. No, and I think you raise an important point there, which is that it's easy to forget that we're now 14 months into this thing, nearly 15 months into this. If we were ranting about this at the beginning of COVID, which actually some of us were in the magazine, we would have been and were dismissed as being insensitive and impatient, I suppose. It's only been a few months. Surely you can manage locking down for a little bit of time for the greater good of the country. But those arguments, of course, no longer apply 14 months into the scenario. And the more months that go on, the less and less that it applies. But of course, the government always finds something new to make you forget that we've been in this for so long. So it's no longer about COVID per se, but about the variants, or about this hotspot or that hotspot. So always something new, always something to regain the fear from. And that essentially, with regards to travel, is what's going on.
That is what's going on, and we'll be back next time something new is going on. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.